There was a moment, just before the door opened, where the world seemed to hold its breath. My fingers still hovered over the brass bell, cold wind curling around my neck like a whisper of what was to come. I could hear voices inside, laughter, clinking cutlery, the muffled sound of a sitcom playing in the background. And then, silence. Footsteps approached. The door creaked open. There he stood, framed perfectly in the warm glow of suburban bliss. A plaid apron, a carving knife, the smell of rosemary and betrayal clinging to him like cologne. My husband, no, the man formerly known as my husband, stared at me with such perfect shock that I half expected a sitcom audience to gasp in the background. "Bethany," he croaked. I smiled, all teeth and civility, the kind of smile that warned hurricanes were imminent. "Happy Thanksgiving, darling. I brought cranberry sauce. Thought you might need a little extra." Behind him, a woman with golden hair and a Pinterest-perfect apron rounded the corner, wiping her hands on a towel. A young girl followed close behind. 2 boys peeked from the staircase. It was picturesque. Idyllic. Vomit-inducing. Mark stepped back. I stepped forward. Brenda, as I would soon formally introduce myself to, blinked. "Can I help you?" "Bethany." "Wife." "First wife, actually," I said, offering her a hand. She took it, confused, as if her brain was still buffering. Mark's jaw opened, closed, and then surrendered. The carving knife slipped from his fingers, clattering to the hardwood floor like a starter pistol. The race to ruin had officially begun. Rewind. Let's start from the beginning, shall we? Back before the cranberry bombshell, before the kitchen showdown, and definitely before Mark's 2 carefully compartmentalized worlds collided over stuffing and shame. 15 years. That's how long I played Bethany Henderson, faithful wife, mother of 2, the woman who could whip up a killer risotto and fake an orgasm in under 5 minutes. We had the house, the golden retriever, the matching Christmas pajamas. From the outside, we were a Norman Rockwell painting come to life. Inside, I was already a ghost. Transparent, weightless, floating through a marriage held together by obligation and habit. My coffee was always half cold, my inbox always full, and Mark, always tired. Always just back from a trip. Always smelling faintly of soap that wasn't mine. It started with a water bill. Not a confession. Not a heated argument. A water bill. A curious little envelope addressed to the Miller family, sent to an address in a different town. A neat cul-de-sac I'd never heard of. The name on the account? Mark. My Mark. At first, I thought maybe it was a mistake. Then maybe a surprise. Had he bought us a cabin? A getaway? Oh, how charming. Then came the second thought. The searing, ice-water-down-your-back realization that the address wasn't a cabin. It was a house. A lived-in, PDA meeting, swing set in the yard kind of house. And that's when I knew. Mark wasn't just tired. He was overachieving. I went full detective, digital trench coat and all. Facebook gave me everything. Brenda Miller. Kindergarten teacher. Home baker. Organic everything. 2 kids, 1 dog, 1 happy family photo after another. And in all of them, there was Mark. My Mark. Smiling like he'd never seen stress in his life. The betrayal wasn't sudden. It was cumulative. Like death by paper cuts. I thought of every time I sat alone on a Friday night while he was working late. Every missed recital. Every time I justified the unjustifiable. And still, no tears. Just clarity. A slow-burning, sarcastic sort of rage that sharpened into something dangerous. Thanksgiving. The perfect storm. Mark, who claimed to be at a soup kitchen. Brenda, who probably thought he was an overworked hero. And me, a woman with a plan and a killer dress. But before the plan, there were the signs. The microaggressions I'd swept under the rug. You're always working, Bethany. Don't forget to enjoy life. Right. While he was off enjoying someone else's. Or you're being paranoid. You really should talk to someone about that. Gaslighting, the vintage kind. He painted me as the untrusting wife. And I, being the supportive idiot I was, apologized. Even my own family missed it. My sister, with her motto of "don't rock the boat," told me to let it go. My mother cooed, A trusting wife is a happy wife. So I trusted. And he built a second life. But no more. The week before Thanksgiving, I became someone else. Not Bethany the housewife. Not Bethany the doormat. But Bethany the Avenger. I practiced lines in the mirror. Perfected my entrance. Studied Brenda's casserole recipe because I planned to critique it in person. By the time the holiday came around, I had everything ready. Babysitter lined up, dress pressed, evidence secured, legal papers in motion. Mark had no idea. He kissed me goodbye that morning, a peck on the cheek like I was the family dog, and off he went straight into my trap. The door opened. The knife dropped. And Thanksgiving would never be the same again. Mark Miller. What in God's name is going on in this house? Brenda's mother's voice thundered through the living room like a holy decree. It was as if a bomb had detonated, but instead of smoke, it was secrets that filled the room, hot, thick, impossible to breathe through. Brenda's eyes welled up instantly. Her knees buckled, caught only by the kitchen counter as she staggered back like she'd taken a bullet. I remained standing. No wobble, no doubt. My heels dug into their pristine hardwood floor as if I was claiming territory. Mark looked like a man who had walked on stage naked and suddenly realized it. His mouth opened, no words followed. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. This isn't what it looks like, he finally mumbled. Oh, honey, I replied, it's exactly what it looks like. A big, fat, juicy betrayal stuffed with lies and basted in cowardice. Brenda let out a sob, one hand covering her mouth, the other reaching for the nearest chair. Her children were crying now, the girl clutching her stuffed bear while the boys stood frozen, as if realizing Dad wasn't Superman. He was the villain. I turned my attention to Brenda, softening just slightly. I know this is a lot. And I'm sorry for your kids. For you. I truly am. I didn't come here to hurt you. I came here to make him hurt. Publicly. Mark moved as if to reach for me, to usher me out of his double-life theater. I stepped back. Don't. You've touched enough women this week. There was silence. Then Brenda's mother, eyes blazing, hissed, "You are a disgrace, Mark. A disgrace to this family." Mark visibly sagged, like the truth had weight, and he was finally starting to feel it. I didn't mean for this to happen. I snorted. You didn't mean to get married? Have children? Take family portraits and post them online with #blessed? What did you mean exactly? Brenda stood now. Her eyes were steel. You said she was your ex. That she went crazy. That she moved away. I smiled. Crazy? No. Moved away? No. Married? Absolutely. Then I pulled the folder from my bag. Thick. Legal. Final. This is the petition for divorce, citing bigamy, fraud, and emotional distress. You'll be served formally, of course. But since we're all here. Happy Thanksgiving. Mark looked like he might faint. I turned to leave, brushing past the silent audience that had become Brenda's extended family. Her brother stood at the foot of the stairs. Her teenage niece held a phone, frozen mid-text. As I reached the door, Brenda's voice called out. Not a cry. Not a scream. Just a simple, trembling word. Bethany. I turned. She walked to me slowly, tears on her face, voice barely a whisper. Do you want to get coffee sometime? Not now. But sometime? And in that moment, we weren't enemies. We were two women scorned by the same man in different timelines. And I nodded. I'd like that. Then I stepped into the chill November air, my heart not broken, but reforged. And behind me, the sound of a family collapsing echoed through the house I would never enter again. I didn't cry on the drive home. I didn't scream. I didn't even turn on the radio. I let the silence fill the car like a bomb. My hands were steady on the wheel, my breath measured. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was floating through someone else's life. I was back. Back in my own skin. Back in control. When I pulled into my driveway, my neighbor across the street waved. I waved back, polite, pleasant, perfectly composed. She had no idea that my marriage had exploded hours earlier in a technicolor burst of truth. That was fine. Let them gossip later. The kids were still at Sarah's, blissfully unaware. I had one night to collect myself before I became their pillar again. One night to process the seismic shift that had cracked open the shell I'd been living in. I poured a glass of wine. No TV. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the click of my phone screen. Messages from friends, family. Most hadn't seen the fireworks yet, but a few texts were coming in. From Mark, please, we need to talk. Deleted. From Brenda, thank you. Hearted. From Sarah, kids are asking if you're okay. Should I tell them you're working late? I replied, tell them I'm writing a new story. The old one had a terrible plot twist. I sank into the couch and let the night wash over me. My thoughts wandered, surprisingly not toward Mark, but to Brenda. We were supposed to hate each other. Instead, I saw her as a mirror image of myself, stuck in a different version of the same prison. Maybe our alliance would be fleeting. Maybe it would become something deeper. But there was solidarity in shared betrayal. The next morning, the phone started ringing at 8 a.m. Reporters. Apparently, Mark's bigamy had gone viral. Someone at the Thanksgiving dinner had filmed the whole showdown and posted it online. Wife crashes husband's double life on Thanksgiving was trending. The video was blurry, but my voice was crystal clear. The internet did what it does best. Memes. Commentary. Sympathy. Judgment. One clip, me saying, "Don't touch me. You've touched enough women this week," was making the rounds as an anthem. I laughed. Not a bitter laugh, but a real, genuine one. The world now knew what I knew. And better yet, Mark could no longer slither his way out of this one. I met with my lawyer later that day. She was delighted with the publicity. Judges love public shaming. This case will fly. I don't want just a win, I said. I want closure. Then you'll have it, she replied, tapping her pen. And then, as promised, I had that coffee with Brenda. We met at a little cafe neither of us had ever been to on neutral ground. She looked tired, but radiant in a way I hadn't seen before. Unburdened. Honest. We didn't talk about Mark much. Instead, we talked about how easy it was to lose yourself. How the signs had been there, just faint enough to ignore. How women are trained to accommodate, excuse, endure. We laughed. We cried a little. And when we parted, we hugged like sisters, not strangers. Mark, on the other hand, had vanished. Probably hiding somewhere, trying to scrape together a narrative where he wasn't the villain. Good luck with that. Me? I got a call from a podcast producer. You have a story, she said. We want to tell it. I told her I already was. In the weeks that followed, my life became a curious cocktail of chaos and calm. Court dates were penciled in like dentist appointments. Lawyers exchanged thick packets of evidence. My inbox overflowed with podcast invites, book agents, and, bizarrely, a brand offering me a lifetime supply of cranberry sauce for the woman who made Thanksgiving iconic. And yet, in the eye of the storm, I found stillness. I moved through my home like a woman reborn, sharpened, more deliberate. The silence that once felt suffocating now whispered freedom. No longer was I checking the time to see if Mark would call, if he'd remember our daughter's dance recital or our son's math competition. There was no more pretending. There was only living. Brenda and I remained in contact, texting articles and snide memes about gaslighting and narcissists like two soldiers who had survived the same battlefield. One afternoon, we even crafted a plan to co-author an anonymous blog. The Ex-Wives Club. A place for stories like ours to live. But not everyone was on board with my newfound empowerment. My mother, bless her stiff upper lip and her pearls of denial, called me one night with a tone dipped in condescension. Bethany, do you really need to be so public about all this? Mother, a man married 2 women. Publicly. I'm just matching the energy. She sighed like I'd disappointed her in a piano recital. Well, in my day, we didn't air dirty laundry. In your day, women died with secrets they should have screamed. I'm not your day. Click. It felt oddly good to draw boundaries. I'd spent so much of my life accommodating others. Now, I was finally choosing myself. But not everything was empowerment and poetic comebacks. There were moments late at night when grief came to roost. Not for Mark, but for the illusion. For the 15 years I gave to a man who saw me as set dressing in his 2-act farce. I missed the companionship I thought I had. The warmth I believed was real. The shared jokes, the bedtime routines, the small rituals that made up a life. Sometimes I'd catch myself reaching for his mug, the one with the chipped handle he always used. I'd sit with it, empty, on the back porch and wonder when exactly he decided I wasn't enough. That question, the unanswerable one, gnawed at me. Until one morning, Brenda texted me a photo. It was of a calendar they'd kept in their kitchen. Tucked into the corner, nearly invisible, was a sticky note. "Don't forget, Bethany's birthday." She captioned it, "He knew. He just didn't care." And somehow, that hurt less. Because it confirmed what I'd begun to accept. I hadn't failed. I wasn't insufficient. He was incapable. The day of the first court hearing arrived. I wore a navy suit and a lipstick shade called Reckoning Red. Mark looked like a man trying to disappear into his own blazer. He avoided my gaze. His lawyer mumbled excuses. I sat tall, hands clasped in my lap, every document in perfect order. "Do you wish to contest the charges, Mr. Miller?" the judge asked. He looked at me then. Not the woman he'd manipulated. Not the wife he'd written off. He saw Bethany. The storm in heels. And he shook his head. "No, Your Honor. I accept everything. Everything. The truth. The lies. The consequences." I walked out of that courtroom not just free, but vindicated. I wasn't just a survivor of betrayal. I was its reckoning. Outside, reporters clamored. Microphones. Questions. Flashbulbs. "Bethany, how does it feel to take back your life?" I looked at the sky. Gray, wide, infinite. "It feels unfinished," I said. Because it was. This wasn't the end. This was the prologue. Months passed. The scandal faded from the front page, though clips of my Thanksgiving mic drop still made the rounds every November. I became a seasonal meme, the pilgrim of payback, someone once called me. I didn't mind. If my humiliation had to live forever on the internet, at least it came with a punchline I controlled. But beyond the viral fame, the real work began, the work of becoming. I sold the house. Not out of spite, but out of necessity. Every hallway whispered echoes of Mark's duplicity. Every creaky stair and empty coffee mug reminded me of who I was when I was invisible. So I bought a small, sun-soaked bungalow near the coast. White shutters. Wild ivy. A porch swing. The kids adapted better than expected. We had our rough patches, tears, questions, the occasional angry outburst. But they saw me fighting for a peace. For honesty. And kids? They absorb strength when it's modeled, not preached. I started writing. First, just journal entries, furious and raw. Then essays. Then posts. The Ex-Wives Club went live, and it took off like a wildfire. Women from around the world shared stories, infidelities, gaslighting, double lives. Hidden pain turned into ferocious truth. Brenda and I co-hosted a podcast by spring. Half the truth. We laughed. We cried. We unpacked trauma like prose. She had a knack for humor. I had a talent for metaphor. Together, we alchemized hurt into healing. One episode we titled, The Carving Knife Chronicles. It charted the anatomy of betrayal and ended with the sound of a turkey timer dinging. Our inbox flooded for days. And then came the letter. Not an email. Not a text. A real, handwritten letter in Mark's oddly familiar script. No return address. Just my name. Bethany. I watched your interview. I heard what you said about freedom and truth. I wanted you to know I'm sorry. Not just for the lies, but for making you feel small. I never deserved you. I know that now. You don't have to respond. I just wanted to say it. I see you now. I should have seen you then. Mark. I read it 3 times. Folded it gently. Slipped it into a drawer. Not to forget, but to remember that apologies don't rewrite the past, they just mark its gravesite. The truth was, I didn't need his remorse. I didn't need his words to be whole. Because I'd already reclaimed my voice. And I was finally loud enough to hear myself think. One balmy June evening, I sat on my porch swing, feet tucked beneath me, a glass of wine in hand. The kids were asleep. Fireflies danced in the yard. And I felt it. Peace. Not a perfect peace. Not a fairy tale ending, but a deep, earned, crackling kind of peace. The kind forged in flames and cooled in clarity. I wasn't just Bethany, the woman who crashed Thanksgiving. I was Bethany, the woman who walked out with her dignity, her story, and her own damn cranberry sauce. Fade to black. And roll credits.